Antivirus and anti-spyware profile. Okay everyone, so in this video we're going to take a look at profiles, antivirus and anti-spyware. And we're going to take a look at how to enable those features that come with your Palo Alto firewall. And as information, you need to have a valid license or a Palo Alto support contract that allows you to enable those features and get real-time updates from Wildfire. So you got to make sure that your firewall is entitled for that service in order for you to enable it. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, once we log in onto the Palo Alto, you're going to see here that I have two policies. I have one policy that says anyone from the guest wireless it's allowed to go to the outside, and this is basically what it gives the guest wireless network access to the internet. We have another policy which is inside to internet access, and this is the policy that provides access from the internal network, or this is my actual corp network, into the outside. So this is the policy that will allow internet access from my internal users. So let's go ahead and enable antivirus and anti-spyware for both. So I'm gonna do two options. I am going to enable the default Palo Alto AV and anti-spyware profile into the guest access, but I'm going to create a custom one that I will like to drop anything that has been identified to be malicious. So you're going to see the difference between default and a custom one. So let's go ahead and first of all, we're going to enable the guest internet access AV default profile, and we're going to also enable the guest internet access anti-spyware default profile. So let's go ahead and take a look at the profiles first. So we mentioned that by default, we have those actions, and those actions are, HTTP, if the traffic, it's HTTP bounded. So if we're going to port 80 or any traffic that is HTTP traffic, I am going to reset both connections. And when it says both, it says client and server. So client connection and server connection in the TCP session, my client and my server, so who's responding to who, I am going to reset that connection and retry it again. Wildfire is the same thing. So if it's detected via Wildfire, I am going to do the same action. SMTP, alert. So I'm just going to get a response. Hey, I'm going to get a response from the firewall saying, hey, I just got this from this particular client, so you are aware and you take actions upon it. And, so on. So basically it's the same. We got a couple of services here and the default action right next to it. So let's go ahead and enable the default on the guest or wireless. Let's go back onto policies, and I'm gonna go to my policy that I already have. Once I have it open, in actions is where I'm going to enable that profile. So in profile setting, I am going to select profiles. And by the way, you can also create group of profiles. So if you have a set of custom profiles that you already got predefined. So for example, you have an AV custom profile, you got an anti-spyware custom profile, you got DOS custom profiles. You can all add them into a group and then just enable that particular group and you're done. But in my case, I'm going to enable them separately for this demonstration. Click on profiles. And we mentioned ourselves that we want to have the guest internet profile to have the default AV profile. So I'm just gonna select here on my drop down, select default, and I am done. Press OK. And now I should have the profile next to the policy, right? You're gonna see the profile and then you're gonna see the AV profile enabled on the policy. Once that's done, we just need to commit and we should be good to go. So let's go ahead and configure the anti-spyware one. So we mentioned that we wanted to have the default on the guest wireless, and let's take a look at the anti-spyware. We actually have two already built profiles on the Palo Alto. The default one, which basically allows just a default action, and if you're wondering what's the default action, if you click here and you take a look at each one, the default action it's just gonna be a block. And let me find the action. Oh, and by the way, the action on the rule is actually based on the thread. So if I find that thread running on that particular profile, so if I'm able to detect that I'm matching against this ID, which is this threat name, this is my default action, which is just alert. So you gotta be very careful. If you leave this in default that you don't know exactly what it's doing, it's just gonna alert you. It's not actually gonna take action. So this is unless you have a specific reason why you wanna enable or avoid an anti-spyware to be blocked, or maybe you have a false positive and you need to put a policy, hey, this is not actually an anti-spyware, you're just treating it as a false positive, please allow it, and then this is how you configure them to customize each one. But in this case, the default is alert. So let's go back. And if we say that we want to be strict, meaning that I want to reset the connection, if you find that the severity of the anti-spyware threat that was detected on the firewall matches a medium, high, or critical, and those levels are dictated by the wildfire threat database. So you gotta make sure that you're actually in agreement with this action. If you're enabling strict, it's gonna reset the traffic from both client and servers. So let's go ahead and for the guest, we're just going to enable the default. I'm going to go to policies. I'm going to go back to guest internet access. Once inside, I'm just going to go back to actions, anti-spyware, and then I'm going to select default, and I am good to go. So if I scroll back to the right, now I have the AV and I have the anti-spyware. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the inside to internet access, and I'm going to create 2 custom AV and anti-spyware profiles. So let's go back to objects. Let's go to antivirus and I'm going to click add. And here I'm going to say corp AV profile. And by the way, you can do a capture. So this is a way to, hey, I want to know a little bit more about that threat. I can actually capture that in a PCAP file, and I can open this in Wireshark and take a deep dive and actually see what's going on that particular frame. So you have the options. And I want to be a little more restrictive, or else I'm going to be a little bit more protective. In this case, I'm just going to drop, hey, just drop absolutely everything that matches that traffic and it seems to be malicious. So I'm just going to drop, and same with wildfire, I'm going to drop. I'm actually being very restrictive, and you know, it's not actually recommended to go like this extreme because you might be blocking something that is not malicious, and then you might have, you know, connectivity issues. So you just need to be aware. But for this purpose, I'm just going to show you that I can do that. Or let's do something a little bit more uniform. Let's go ahead and I want to have IMAP to be alert. I want to SMB. I'm just going to allow it, which shouldn't be allowed. Let's do the reset both SMB. Okay. And then exceptions. Okay. So in exceptions, again, if you have false positive, and there can be a case where you have something that is being treated as a virus and it's not actually a virus, but it's been blocked by the Palo Alto, and you want to make sure that that particular threat is not treated by this policy, you need to go into the threat vault. And Palo Alto, on its research center, it will have a database of threats. And I actually have the link open here on my browser. This is Threat Vault. In Threat Vault, I can actually do a search for any possible threats that the Palo Alto database has already identified for. So in my case, I'm working on the AV side, so I'm just gonna select antivirus. Those are the threats that, you know, beginning with the letter A, and this is the ID right here. So if you, for example, want to select, say, for example, I have a thread that is matching against this, which is not really a thread, you know, I'm just giving as an example, but I want to have this exempt from my rule, I can go into threatvault.paloaltonetworks.com, grab the ID, copy it, go into my policy, to my profile, paste, and add. So once I add that, there you go. The Palo Alto already identifies that against the wildfire or the Threat Vault database. And then I can have an exception and say, well, I don't want this to be treated on this particular policy, so just let it go through. Okay, so once you have that done, then you go into the policy, click on Inside, and once you're on the actual setting, or policy rule setting, you go ahead into the profile, and then I select my custom one, and press OK. So now, if I scroll all the way to the right, I have my guest with the default profile, and I have my custom profile for my inside to outside users. Okay, so let's do the final profile, which is the anti-spyware for my inside to internet access. Let's go back to objects, anti-spyware, and here I have the default ones like I mentioned previously. I'm just going to create a new one, and this is anti-spyware, okay, in my core profile, anti-spyware core profile. In rules, then I'm going to say, hey, my default corp action, any threat name, anything matching any category, or I can be specific, If I want to block something, that matches a backdoor or a botnet, command and control type of threat on the network, you can say, well, anything that matches a botnet, I want to drop it, right? And then we want to select all severities, and then anything that matches botnet will be dropped. So severity any, and the category is botnet, and the action is dropped. So this will be my anti-spyware policy. In my case, I will strongly recommend to go any, and then reset both, and then you should be good to go. Press OK, and again, exemptions, you can again go into exemptions and enable specific signatures that you want to avoid from being matched against this action. So you want to avoid this from being dropped, from being resetted. This is where you add that exemption. And DNS signatures, you can have the option for the Palo Alto to query against that particular destination if it has a DNS signature attached to it on the Palo Alto database, on the cloud database, and you can say sinkhole means that I am not going to resolve that name and I'm not going to let anyone get there. Or in this case, the endpoint will not be able to reach that anti-spyware repository or destination. So the anti-spyware is trying to gather data from a particular machine. With this, I am not going to allow that to resolve any name that it's pointing to a malicious site. And we'll press OK. And we have our anti-spyware custom profile. We'll go back onto policies. Inside to internet access. And once inside, I then find my anti-spyware. And then click here. Select my custom one. Press OK. And finally commit. And there you have it. It's very straightforward, and might as well take advantage of the default settings from Palo Alto. Just enable on the policy, and you should be good to go. In our next video, we're going to discuss URL filtering and file blocking profiles. Thank you for watching.